I bring up deity worship in the video title to refer to what I want to talk about in this particular chat. And that is, do you need to believe in gods? Do you need to be a theist of some stripe in order for you to practice mysticism, witchcraft, and ceremonial magic? So do you need to believe in gods? And if you do believe in gods, if you are theist, then does it matter whether you are a soft polytheist or a hard polytheist? Do you believe in personal gods that are distinct, separate entities, or do you believe they're all facets of the same divine source? And so are you of the belief that, for example, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary are interchangeable, or do you believe Mother Mary and Kuan Yin are separate and distinct? So is Metzli, the Aztec moon goddess, interchangeable with Zong'er, the Chinese moon goddess, because they both talk about rabbits on the moon, right? So are they interchangeable? Is there something universal there, and we're just using different names and using different cultural depictions for the same exact goddess or goddess energy? Or are they completely separate and distinct? Trying to conceptualize religiosity into hard polytheism versus soft polytheism, I don't know how well it translates in Eastern metaphysics. In Eastern metaphysics, and I know that sounds overbroad, like I'm generalizing in a sweeping way over the entire continent, South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, North Asia. But yeah, I'm going to do it. I am going to do that. And it's because I do find a lot of it has at the fundamental level very similar and united belief systems and ideologies and how they perceive or conceptualize divinity. One speculation for that is because it all comes from Hinduism. And so Buddhism, Taoism, Shinto, the folk religions that you see spread across Asia, they all source back to Hindu beliefs. And so they are all aspects of Hinduism. There's a metaphor that Shifu or Buddhist monks, spiritual teachers in the East often use, which is the divine is infinite and it's like a flame. So if you light a single candle, right, you can take another candle and you can light that candle with this flame. And now you have two equal flames. In a sense, they're sourced from the same flame, but in a sense, now that you have done this act, there's some sort of a transmutation of some sort that, yeah, they are now separate and distinct flames, even though on some high level, they are still one and the same source. So in terms of Eastern metaphysics, there isn't this either or binary where you're either a soft polytheist or you are a hard polytheist. It's presumed that you're both. Then because the divine source is infinite, there's also this concept that the same flame can be lit in, say, 7 different places all at the same time. So in the same way, we can conceptualize there's one flame here, right? I take a blank candle and I light this candle with the flame here. Now I have 2 candles. I take another candle and I light it here or here. Now I have 3 candles. Now these 3 candles are completely separate and distinct physical matters, and yet at the same time, they are sourced from the same flame. Likewise, these 3 flames, or these 3 candles, the flame can simultaneously light up on all 3 candles at the same time. They are the same source, and yet separate and distinct. So for instance, Kuan Yin, Guanyin Pusa in East Asia is an emanation of Avalokiteshvara in South Asia. And the metaphor for that is that one candle was lit from this candle over here. And so it is the same source. So in one way, you could say Avalokiteshvara and Guanyin Pusa are one and the same, but at the same time, you would also assert that they are now separate and distinct. Cultural and historic practice also matters a lot. Mysticism is predicated on the belief that there is an interactive give and take relationship between a spirit realm of some kind, which is the counterpart to the physical world that we live in, and the human consciousness, the aware and self-aware aspect of ourselves, controls and operates what happens in this physical world. All that is to say that the evolution or development of human culture and history, civilizations, does have an impact on how two different candle flames, the emanations of the same spirit, evolve. Because we are, like I said, I believe in an interactive relationship. So I don't believe that the existence or the power and strength of gods is dependent on humans. I don't believe that, but I do think there's some kind of an influence there. And so I'm back to square one, where I don't know how to parse through hard polytheism versus soft polytheism. So I don't think it's a coincidence we should ignore when we look at the Aztec moon goddess Metzli and the mythology of a rabbit on the moon, and Zonger in East Asia and the mythology of a rabbit on the moon. There's something there. But at the same time, to say they are one and the same, I think for me, it's just best to say yes and no, right? It's separate and distinct because different neural pathways due to a different evolution of culture and history means that how you invoke the two are very different. But on some, like if you go back far enough, right, just in terms of the human evolution, you go back far enough, we all come from the same ancestor. So you go back far enough, these two concepts or emanations of the lunar goddess or a feminine lunar concept, they go back to the same source. The other question I've been mulling around in my mind is, can you be atheist and not believe in gods or goddesses at all and still practice witchcraft or be a mystic or occultist ceremonial magician? So I'm not going to look up any formal definitions in academic treatises. I'm going to just work off colloquial lay common knowledge because I want to have a conversation friend to friend, maybe even practitioner to practitioner. So when I think of atheism, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward definition in the sense that it means you don't believe in gods and goddesses. And I would go so far as to say, if you don't believe in gods and goddesses, if you're atheist, you don't believe in spirits. So you don't believe in hungry ghosts, preta, I guess fairies from a Western traditional practice standpoint. You don't believe that a spirit world that is in coexistence with the physical material world that you can perceive through your five physical senses exists. So for me, I would go so far. Maybe I'm expanding the agreed upon definition. If I am, please let me know. And are you telling me that an atheist can believe in immortals and jinn and demons, but don't believe in gods and goddesses? No, I think it's the whole thing, right? The baby and the bathwater. And that's absolutely fine. In fact, I feel dumb having to even articulate that it's fine because obviously it's fine. In fact, to be honest, I won't even be that mad if I find out at the end of days that the atheists were correct. I mean, I'm not even going to be too mad about it. Where I get flummoxed, I suppose, is the question, can you be atheist and practice witchcraft, ceremonial magic, or any form of mysticism? And I do think of witchcraft as a form of mysticism. Mysticism I see as this catch-all umbrella term, and then you have witchcraft and ceremonial magic, and some people differentiate between the two, others do not. Shamanism, spirit mediums, all of that would be under that category, that umbrella catch-all of the term mysticism. So yeah, mysticism. Can you practice any form of mysticism and be atheist? I don't know how you can, except that you are acknowledging that there's a hypocrisy somewhere in there, which is fine. I mean, I think all humans are inherently hypocritical. I do lots of things that are hypocritical and inconsistent. You do lots of things that is hypocritical and inconsistent. It's part of being human. And I think where we can develop or evolve to be a little bit more self-aware is to just say, okay, this is hypocritical, as long as you can acknowledge that. So that's my question. Does an atheist who practices a form of mysticism, are they openly self-aware that it's hypocritical, or are they asserting that it's not hypocritical? And that's where I think the interesting debate happens. The interesting debate here is it hypocritical to be atheist and to practice a form of mysticism such as witchcraft? So first, I think we should acknowledge and agree that this is a point of contention. It's a controversy. So this would be a debate. People will hold differing positions. What I'm coming forth with in this video chat is not the source of all truth that cannot be challenged. Far from it. This is a debate, a controversy where we haven't really reached an indelible conclusion. And this is just my perspective. Mysticism, I think of the sacred mysteries, I think of mystery traditions that is premised on some divine source of knowledge being presented to and given to humans. So how do you receive divine knowledge if there's no divinity? I don't understand that part. And so I guess because that's the way I frame mysticism, I would argue that it is hypocritical to self-profess as an atheist and also practice a form of mysticism. And then after saying that, I want to backpedal and also point out that I don't know and have knowledge in all forms of mysticism. And so I think maybe to be a little fairer in this discussion, I want to narrow that scope. So if I narrow the scope of mysticism, I think I can only really talk somewhat even quasi-intelligently about Taoist mysticism, so Eastern forms of mystic traditions. I would argue that you cannot practice any form of Asian mysticism, and I'm using that broad, sweeping descriptive here. So yes, South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, all of the island cultures of Asia, so the whole Pacific, all of the Austronesian Islandic cultures as well. I just don't believe you can practice any form of Asian mysticism and not be a theist, not presume that a world of gods and goddesses exist. In the video title, I used specifically Taoist mysticism just for convenience, but really I mean Asian mysticism because I do believe Taoist mysticism and Taoism in general, folk religions in East Asia, are traced back to the mystic traditions of South Asia. I know that the position I hold isn't popular among Han Chinese, but if you asserted that Taoism is a form of Hinduism and that Buddhism is a form of Hinduism, I would actually agree. I agree with that, although just to be fair, it's a minority position among the Han Chinese. Han or Han Chinese people would assert that Taoism is a religion and philosophy native to China. And yeah, it is, but it came from somewhere. And guess what? I believe it came from Hinduism. So I believe East Asians need to have a lot more respect for South Asians. But now I'm getting political. I'll stop. Mystical practices, as I understand it, and sure, there are absolutely limitations to the way I understand it, but mystical practices are about reaching to a different dimension, in a sense, like reaching beyond the physical world to kind of work on and modify, revise spirit energies that are the counterparts to the physical world that you see. And so if you can find a way to maneuver the spiritual counterparts to the physical world, then you can create changes in the physical world. But just like there's bureaucracy among human civilizations and humans occupy this world, and it's really hard to do pretty much anything on this planet if you don't coordinate and cooperate with human beings of different hierarchical titles. And there are very bureaucratic ways to do things in different parts of the physical world that we dwell upon. There is an equal spiritual counterpart to that in the spirit world. Now, when you get into are they gods, goddesses, immortals, fairies, gnomes, like if you want to get into the actual conversation of how do you want to describe that, that's interesting, that's culture specific, that's history specific. But in terms of believing that that world exists, if you believe that sort of a spiritual counterpart with an entire organization of some kind of spirit hierarchies, gods, goddesses, immortals, whatever you want to call it, but there's a whole realm there that is the counterpart to the physical realm we live in, then you're not an atheist. And if you're an atheist and you are saying all of that thing that I just talked about doesn't exist, fair. But then how do you practice forms of mysticism? Another point I feel very sympathetic to is that a lot of people who are mystics, people who believe in gods and goddesses, deeply religious people, the community of deeply religious people can come across as crazy. And I can understand if a rational skeptic individual does not want to be associated with or linked with such people at all. And so calling oneself atheist may in fact just be more of a reaction. It's reactionary to the general, I guess, perception of religious individuals. So you're saying, I don't want to be grouped with those religious types of people. Therefore, I need to find a different label to identify as, and I'm going to reach for atheism. That's, again, speculation, and that I'm sympathetic toward. I am genuinely interested in understanding what atheist witchcraft looks like. So if you're an atheist witch, I'm really interested in hearing your perspective on this. Sure, I do have an opinion. Sure, I gave my opinion, but my mind isn't made up. It's not set in stone, so I'm open to change. Can you be an atheist mystic? Yes or no? Why or why not?